Welcome to the Life Grip podcast. My name's Adam Phillips, and the mission statement for Life Grip is improve mental health and prevent disease through nutrition, meditation, and active lifestyle. So all the guests that I have on this podcast is in line with that, and we try and add as much value as we can and things you can implement right away in your own life. And I really believe if we all step inside of our fears and get on the other side of them, our whole world opens up. And if we can change our state as quickly as possible, we can close that gap much, much quicker from where we are now to where we want to be in the future. Marc is the founder of Simplifying Life. He's a counsellor, he's a life coach, he's an NLP practitioner, and he does a lot of work in the mental health space. And he's currently studying at uni. He's doing his master's. Welcome to the Life Grip podcast, Marc.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Yeah, good to be here. You know, like I said, it's good to see you, mate. It's been a while.
It has. So how long ago was it when we worked together?
You know what? I'm really bad when it comes to the past, but that must be maybe, we've been living here since 2012. So it must have been, 2013 maybe?
Yeah.
4 or 5 years?
About then, yeah. So just to give people a bit of background, I first come to you, Marc, when I needed a full lifestyle change. I'd already changed a fair bit of stuff in my lifestyle. I used to party very hard, and then I needed to change. I got very sick out on site when I was working out in the mines, and I lost 12 kilos in 48 hours, and that was a result of poor nutrition on site and that lifestyle I was living up until that point. Like the alcohol and eventually throwing some drugs into the mix and that sort of thing. And the natural progression from there, from changing to a clean whole food diet, living an active lifestyle, and getting into meditation, the natural progression was to seek out a life coach. And that's how I found you, Marc. And I still implement things today from what we've done previously. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're up to at the moment, and your approach on things?
Yeah, sure. Look, I've got a bit of dark past that I'll share that real quick. Like I used to be a barrister solicitor a long time ago in my home country, the Netherlands. I can't say I didn't like it. I did like it, but what I didn't like about law as such is the fact that usually, especially in civil and law, it comes at the cost of someone. You know, so there's always a loser somewhere, or someone doesn't get what they want.
Yeah,
and that really started to bite me quite hard. You know, I'm not particularly religious, but I do live by the principle that I'd like other people to do to me what I do to them, and vice versa. And that principle in law goes out the window pretty quick. I've done a lot of things to people that legally is completely allowed, but that I would not want other people to do to me at all. And had to make a clean break, or cut a long story short, I quit. Pretty much I quit in 2003, just gave it up. I gave up full-time practice in 2000, but sort of did some stuff on the side until 2003, which is when we emigrated to Australia. And found life coaching is like I want to do something else, and always want to do something with people, learn new stuff, you know, be of help to other people. And counseling and coaching was sort of pretty much a natural progression from that for me. So got into coaching, got into neurolinguistic programming, which I found fascinating, even as a lawyer, because it's got a lot to do with language, the language of the mind. And as you roll on, it sort of flowed into more counseling type work. And well, here we are, you know, about, 15 years later. Doing a bit of work at uni, still loving my counselling work and counselling studies. What I do, the whole idea, what I base my practice on, I think, is I call it a four corners approach. You know, when we want to look at changes in our life, we have to look at the mental. You know, how do we think about stuff? We have to look at the physical. What do we do? We have to look at the emotional stuff, like how do we feel about that? And we have to look at the spiritual side of things, you know, what's the purpose, what's the meaning of whatever we're doing, whether you do that religiously or otherwise, but it's the spiritual approach, you know, sort of higher purpose. And as soon as you start to bring all those four into the mix, you can make quite drastic changes. And that's what I like when I'm working on with people, sort of tickle them in all areas and make sure they start balancing everything out, not just looking at one thing in particular. So whatever people pretty much throw on my table nowadays, mate, it's I don't really care. There's always changes that can be made. I think the bulk of my work lies in the proper mental health field at the moment, anyway. So people with anxiety, depression type symptoms, PTSD, work-life balance issues, relationship issues, you mentioned it. but still very much, guys like you as well, just wanted to make a change, not mentally having mental ill health or anything else, but just going like, what I'm doing right now is not working. How do I do it differently? So still see people like that as well, do a bit of executive coaching with people in higher functions just to be the sparring partner. And it's fascinating, man. It's human potential is just, it's ginormous. And to be able to work with people in that field is, it's a privilege, but it's also very cool. It's just cool. It's cool to do.
Yeah, definitely. So like, the thing that I found with you when we were working together is that like the current state of mind that I was in, like I was struggling to get out of that. And
Mm.
you gave me so many tools in order to change my state very, very quickly.
Mm.
So, and what I found as time went on, like the quicker I changed my state, like the further along and the more progress that I was making. And it was just really good to have someone there to call anytime and have the weekly sessions. And yeah, because I think we all like to think that we're capable and we're in control, but sometimes we need someone to talk to. Sometimes we need to reach out and get that different perspective. It's like walking through your kitchen every day, and you think it's clean, and someone walks in and they've seen it for the first time. They're seeing it from another angle, and they go, "Oh, this is what's that out there for?"
Yeah.
So having someone else there, but not just anyone, someone else that's educated and is equipped. So in regards to people just wanting to make that lifestyle transformation, what do you sort of find is the biggest sort of commonality that you normally have to tackle first?
It's there's two actually. I think usually
Yeah.
people's reasoning is off,
Yeah.
and I'd say that in a very in a very respectful way. I don't want to be disrespectful. People's reasoning is off. They come up with reasons why what is not working in their lives will remain to not keep working, and they can't seem to get out of that. So they're leaning in one way in their mental thinking, so that they're stuck in that pattern, and it's really hard to sort of get out for them. That's one thing I find. And the second one that most always complements that one is the behavioral element. So that even if people want to change and they've got good reasons to change, the behavior just doesn't want to seem to catch up with that. It's behaviorally, it's too hard to change, or too hard to do things differently, and then all the because and what ifs and yes buts come in session. So it's a strange paradox, because people obviously come to me because something in their life is not working, and then I often have to take them to task because they try and justify why what is not working is not going to change. And I go like, well, why did you come to me if you're constantly trying to justify to me that what currently is going on is what is going to be, for the rest of your life or whatever else. So why are you trying to convince me of your correctness and my incorrectness? Like, otherwise, what are we doing here? It sort of gets real funny, and I do it with a lot of respect anyway. But it gets to that point. People, I say, okay, well, what can you do about that? And then they go, oh, nothing, because, and then all these reasons come out, and say, right, yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah, probably that's not going to change until you start changing what goes on inside. So that's where the start of it lies, behaviorally and mentally, very often, and that then comes with a sense of feeling bad and losing sense of purpose. So that there's sort of natural side effects of that. But it's for me, and that's the practice that I'm in anyway, and probably also the clientele I attract. It's mostly something's off in their thinking, and that then has a behavioural component in it that makes them feel bad and out of purpose.
Do you find that the reason people come to you for, or they think they want to go to a certain point, or they've got some sort of target, or what they think needs to be fixed, is something completely different once you delve in further?
Yeah, often. Yeah, often. Very often. That's a good point, actually. Yeah. As they come in with one thing, and because they're so stuck in one side of looking, or one way of looking at stuff, they think that the solution is the opposite end of that spectrum. Whereas very often it's a parallel track, or it's actually something that's lateral from that and not the opposite. So they don't want to feel bad, because that's the general summary of what most people go through. But it ends up that feeling bad is not really the issue; it's feeling out of purpose that's the issue, or it's not feeling bad as the issue. but it's something that just in check that causes them to feel bad. So it's not changing that feeling, it's just changing the behavior. And very often it goes from, I just want to feel better to, I want to behave differently. But that goes over the sessions. Or you teach them more an umbrella way of looking at stuff. And then they go like, oh, actually, I've been in control all along, haven't I? I just thought I was out of control. So yeah, very often the initial thing that they come in with sort of morphs into something more or different altogether, yeah, which is kind of fascinating, you know. And I don't even steer that process; it just sort of happens.
Yeah, okay. It's almost like guiding them sometimes, and like it's all there in their head, but you just guide them in the way where they'll actually come to that realization of the real thing that's wrong, or the
Yeah,
real place
yeah,
that they want to go to.
yeah. Well, it's often that question of how would you like to see things differently? You know, and that's
Mm.
where the real discussion starts. Because obviously, what we talk about, you know, what brought you here and what the issue and how's it affecting you, or whatever else. And then one of my logical sort of segue questions is, well, how would you like to see things differently? And very often people come up with something that's quite unrelated to what they just told me the problem is. And you go, oh, that's interesting. So, okay, well, how's that? You know, how does that work? And that opens up a discussion. And yeah, sometimes it's pretty stock standard and straightforward, but mostly we start to undig stuff and unravel stuff. And you know, the superficial stuff that they came to my session with, as in not superficial, but the surface stuff. I don't mean superficial, but the stuff that lays on the surface is not the stuff that's actually bugging them. It's something entirely different. You know, so they might feel that they're angry and they want to find ways to overcome that anger, or they find that their job is not satisfying, so they want to look for some other work, but it turns out to be a dissatisfaction with life in general, or there's some sort of loss of control or loss of purpose that ultimately got them angry. And when you start digging deeper, that's the real juicy bits for me anyway. That's where the real change starts to happen, because anger dissipates as soon as people find themselves more on purpose and start, you know, doing what it is they really enjoy, and you know, making good results with that one. And that's the same with you. You know, once you found out a healthy, clean living and you know, changing a life in that respect pretty much changes the whole ball game. And all these other elements that were connected with not so healthy living start to clean up. It's like it's pretty much an automatic.
Exactly. Like once you start to clean up your lifestyle, it starts to transfer into other areas of your life. It's just a natural progression that
Yeah, yeah,
happens
exactly.
by default.
And I think that's sort of the core of my practice and my approach anyway. Is like, well, and I'm sorry for using plain English here, but let's skip all the bullshit stuff. Just let's
Mm.
start looking at the real issue here, is what's
Yeah.
going on. Because everything that falls under that umbrella gets affected. So if we can make the umbrella picture better, then no matter what sits underneath that umbrella will improve. It just has to. You know, and that's what I find. And the umbrella is pretty much all that sits in here. You know, it's that whole combination of emotion, thought, and the physical behavior that comes with
Mm. Simplifying life.
that.
Like, pardon the pun, but I mean that just, yeah, it just makes sense. You know, if you can pretty up that umbrella, then everything underneath it will sort of start to take care of itself. And you said that as your purpose drops off, problems start to arise. So once you
Mhm.
start to lose your purpose, then the problems start to rise, and like you'll end up um, giving the tools or making that client or the patient able to come back and realize their purpose again, and by default things start to clean up again. Correct?
Yeah, and that sounds lofty, you know, because
Yeah.
everyone wants to find their purpose, and
Yeah.
but even just
But they've
finding
already got it,
meaning,
really. Yeah, they've just got to
finding
uncover it.
finding meaning in what's going on, or finding meaning what you're
Right.
doing and why you're doing that. So it's that why question, you know.
Mm.
And I don't know if you know good old Jim Rohn. He's not with us anymore, but he used to be one of the 1980s sort of mentors of me by listening to all his CDs. And he used to say, you know, if the what and the why is clear, the how gets easier. And I
Mm.
thought, oh, that always makes sense to me. You know, if I know what I want and why I want it, and that why is a big one,
Mm.
then the road to actually get there to how, you know, what do you need to do to get there gets easier. And
Mm.
what I find with a lot of people is that they are relatively clear on what it is that they want, but then immediately get caught up in how do I get there, without asking themselves why it is that they want it. You know, and sometimes those whys And I know we get a bit conceptual here, but I often find that people are caught up in whys that are not their whys, their society's whys, or their husband or wife's whys, or it's, you know, the boss's why, or it's the parental beliefs is whys. So it's not why I want it, but why everyone else thinks I should want it, or why the world says it's a good thing. So, you know, when I became a lawyer, even though I wanted to study law, I was like, well, that's great. So I didn't know my what, I didn't know my how, and my why was because I wanted to help people. But I never really realized that in law, in helping people, often it goes together with kicking others. It's just the nature of the game. And until I started realizing why I was really in business, which is now why I like counseling so much, it's helping people full stop, you know, not at the expense of someone else. You know, I could have stayed a lawyer. Look, I was good at it. It's not being arrogant. I was just good at it. I'm a smart fella. But when I started feeling that why that was really driving me is like helping people and making the world a better place, in a sense, wasn't going to be fulfilled in law, at least not for me, because it came at the expense of others. I had to quit. But that was only after I really questioned myself, like, what am I in this game for? You know, the game of life. You know, and I find a lot of people will start to pick careers or do work or live a certain life that has certain reasons. So there is a why, but it sort of undercuts them and it sabotages them in other areas because they're not really living their potential. They just settle for, you know, the fact that we need a house and therefore we need a mortgage and therefore we need a job and we need a BMW or a Mercedes in the garage or whatever else. And they, you know, do that, but then it doesn't link in what actually makes their life meaningful. And that makes them discontented very often. And I know it's a shortcut, but that's often, you know, what I get, especially, and I'll have to be sort of sexist here. I find that with guys very often, anywhere between 30 and 50, you know, that they've reached a certain level of success or achievement. And then the big question is like, what am I doing all this for? You know, what's the purpose? What's now what? You know, and that's the big stuff, because then you start to look at, well, what has been the driving force? You know, what have been the values behind everything that you've been doing? What's your purpose? And are you living that still, or is there something missing? Is there a vacuum? Is there a void that you thought all the stuff and all the goodies and all the achievement and all the success could fill up, or is there actually something more? And then things start to change. So it's you know, the Jim Rohn thing still counts for me. Is like, if I know what I want, and if I really am strongly in touch with why I want it, then it's not hard. You know, counseling for me is not hard work. And people sometimes ask me, is like, oh, you know, as I speak with 25, sometimes 30 people a week, you know, on top of all the other stuff that I'm doing, and they go like, oh man, don't you get tired of talking to people? I go, no, I love it, man. It's just, you know, I actually have more energy at the end of the day than I start off the day with. It's just because this stuff gives me energy. So the why is like, I think anyway, I'm completely fulfilling, you know, one of my reasons for being here, and that recharges my battery. So the people that don't have that, you know, where their battery is really discharging, is like, well, you're losing more energy than you're actually gaining. So maybe that reason why is not completely being fulfilled. And let's look at that, because if you know what really makes your, you know, what floats your boat and makes your heart sing, it can't go wrong.
Mm. So when you were a lawyer and in a way you lost meaning and then like lost purpose, so you've gone and found what like where you really found meaning, which is what you're doing now, and the purpose was already there by default. So when people find meaning, purpose usually follows, correct?
Yeah. Well, meaning and purpose are very closely linked for
me. Yeah,
me.
right. Yeah.
And sometimes you can use it in reverse as well. So if you go through some crappy stuff, then you can say, well, that was crap, and just feel victim of that. Or you can say, well, what was the meaning behind that? You know, for what purpose did I have to go through this sort of stuff? You know? And once you find that meaning, which is probably a self-constructed meaning or one that you find in a more higher sense, but even if it's self-constructed, your brain's quite happy. You can say, oh, right, okay, well, that was the reason why I did that. Or it has been so beneficial for me because, and you can hold on to that story, then you feel more on purpose because you can start to see it as being in line with something that's slightly bigger than you. And, and that's a question I often give, like, is life predetermined? You go, well, I don't know. I don't know. But I think my personal belief is Well, yeah, to a degree, it's predetermined, because if I look at my life, you know, and the way it's unfolded, the revolutionary things that I went through in my life, most of the big steps, I had no say in. They happened. You know, it's like, well, sure, I worked towards them, but usually the big steps or the big things that happened in my life were completely out of left field. I just like, I didn't see that coming, you know, and it was major. So I think there is some sort form of predetermination somewhere. On the other hand, the levels of predetermination are so huge that it still feels like you got free choice. You know, and then that's, I know that gets into a discussion where a lot of people would disagree with me, and that's fine. But I think, you know, I see life as a big footy field or as a big play field, as a playground anyway, but it's so big that we can't really see the outside boundaries of it. But there are some boundaries, and within those boundaries, we can pick. You know, and so purpose is within that big playing field where maybe there is some sort of predetermined path that you walk. You can still have a lot of choice there, and that's the choice that you give your life by finding out what's really important to me, to you, and how am I living that? You know, so for me, law was cool because I like the intellectual challenge and I like the money. I can tell you that, and I liked everything that came with that sort of prestige and the intellectual challenge. But then when I looked at what I didn't like about it is the kicking people element, you know, the time investment that I had to make there, the sacrifices I had to make. And you think, well, you've got to weigh them up at some point. Like, what's really important to me? What am I willing to give up in order to get somewhere else? And if that doesn't gel anymore, if the balance goes off, it starts to affect you. And does that mean that law is bad? No, no, not at all. It's just for me, in what I want from life, it just didn't suit my purpose. You know, it just didn't do it for me. And yeah, how did I get in contact with mental health? Well, it got in contact with me, really. You know, so and that's where I find, you know, the biggest revolutions in life, the major life changes. When I was 27, you couldn't have told me that by the age of 49 I would be a counsellor and working at uni. I probably would have laughed at you like, nah, just don't be a fool. You know, I'll probably be partner in a law firm by now. But here I am, you know, about 22 years later, and well, yeah, I am a counsellor. Now, did I see that coming? No. But do I think it's still in line with that bigger picture or a bigger play field, you know, that my life is? Yeah, I think so. It still falls within that field. And I think the closer you can get, and that's the ultimate aim by thinking and feeling and practicing and giving meaning, the closer you can get to this idea of, I'm starting to get a grip on what this thing is. It seems that I'm coming in touch more with what I'm actually here for, what I'm doing. It doesn't have to be all lofty, but the more it feels like it's something, well, and I know you and I talked about a lot more downstream, you know, it comes with ease. And the more you're in line, you know, counseling feels in line because it just comes easily. I love it. It's not hard work. So I was like, well, if it's that easy and it makes me feel that good, it must be something that's part of my purpose. It just has to be. Because otherwise it would be harder. It would be more upstream.
Yeah, definitely. Like that downstream perception and point of view is a big one for me. And now that I'm doing what I want to do, I don't know the last time that I've said, thank God it's Friday. And I don't know the last time that I've said, I hate Mondays. It just doesn't happen.
No, yeah,
So,
I'm with you.
yeah. And it's interesting you said, like, at the end of the day, you've got more energy because you've just had an amazing day.
Yeah.
It's like someone else has just had an amazing day off away from where they spend 9 to 5, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
So once you find out what you want to do and flow downstream, then that sort of meaning, that purpose is there. And there is no such thing as hard work. Like you can work through the night. Like it doesn't matter, you know, if you need to, if need be. Yeah. And I know you get emergency calls and that sort of thing that come in, and yet you're all over it. Like you're drawn to it. That's the other thing is you're drawn to it. You don't have to motivate yourself when you're doing what's right. Like when you're being your true self, correct?
It's what I think is the difference between inspiration and motivation, you know, and there's lots of writing on that one, and there's lots of literature on that, but motivation is an external drive to do something, and it can work. You know, if there's a bear chasing me, I'm really motivated to actually start running, you know, so there's an external force driving me. For many people, that can be a good force to get started. ultimately, if you have to keep motivating yourself, it becomes harder and harder and harder. You know, 'cause it's always that external force. I either do it for the money, I do it for the prestige, I do it to stay healthy, I do it because my wife, husband, partner tells me to do so, or my partner, my parents think it's a good idea. So constantly there's motivation. You have to sort of kick yourself. Whereas if you have inspiration, you know, it comes from within. Full stop. You know, it's like, why would I want to do anything else than what I'm doing? Because I love it. You know, and it's not always easy, hey? And it probably is a good thing to explain that upstream downstream thing a little bit. So like when I and because it has part or it has partly it's got some foundation in our thinking. Like and I was brought up with, you know, and my parents survived World War II as kids, you know, so they had a tough upbringing, man. It's like they both lived in big cities and got bombed by the Germans and whatever else. So, you know, for them, it was a lot of motivation. Like they had a lot of external motivation to drive, to prove, you know, to move forward. So what they taught me in all their love, because they meant well, is like study hard, work hard, and then you will be safe. You know, because that was for them something they missed in their youth, and they wished the best for me. So, and I took that on board, man. I took that on board seriously. So I thought life was upstream. You know, you had to do all this stuff. You know, paddle and just jump in your little kayak and just go, man, because there's the current of life coming at you. And you just have to paddle, 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 paddle to ultimately end upstream where all the results would be. And that was my belief system for a very long time. And hey, look, it worked. You know, I loved law, but I had to study really hard. You know, I did silly hours. And then I got into law practice. Again, went all right. You know, I was good at it. Had to work really silly hours and got tired in it. But I thought, well, that's good. You know, if you get tired, that means that you're making progress. And then I got into contact with what some more spiritual type teachers, but all more personal development teachers. And some of them said, like, well, why would you want to go upstream? How stupid's that? It's like, why wouldn't you want to just turn your kayak around and go downstream? You know, because first of all, when you go upstream, you have to work really hard. That's one thing, but you're actually not making much progress. You know, it's like it's little gain for really hard effort, and you constantly have the flow of life against you. Whereas if you turn your kayak around, change your belief system about the fact that success is uphill or upstream, and actually start believing that success is downstream, why don't you just turn your kayak around? And the only thing you really have to do is course correct. You know, every now and then you have to stick your pedal in the water so you don't smash into rocks. So there's still stuff that needs to happen. And you can still set a course, so you can still pedal hard in order to go left or right or straight ahead, whatever you want to do, or speed up. But it's so much more effortless. And then I thought, you know, the biggest example I heard of that one I always use that with clients is like, you know, some clients will use, oh, but look at the salmon, you know, even nature, you know, wants to go upstream. And you go, like, you know what happens to the salmon when they actually get there? You know, they just have a root. Like, okay, well, cool, that's all right. You know, so they have good sex and then they die. You're like, well, what's the use of that? You know, some actually make it back downstream and will try again, but then the second time around, they're probably too exhausted and won't make it anymore. And when I started really, and that's where the belief system comes in, when I started looking into this whole idea of, okay, if downstream is actually an easier way, not a lazy way, but an easier way to get results, then really what I have to do is change my belief system around the fact that success is upstream and start believing that success is actually downstream. And I just have to start course correcting and let the flow of life take me. And I know that sounds conceptual and sort of abstract, but really once you start applying it to your life, you know, for me, counseling, and for you, you know, nutrition and health and well-being, it's completely downstream. It's just, you know, you just flow with it. And the most amazing things happen because you speed along, you know, the flow of life. So stuff comes at you pretty quick and you go, well, okay, that was a cool opportunity. Well, I have to let that pass because I'm just going too fast, and that's all right. But once that whole idea has changed, I have to let up on opportunities every now and then. Some things I'd like to do, but I just can't. And I go, like, how cool is that, man? That stuff is coming at me that I have to say no at because I just don't have time, or I choose to, you know, to look after myself a bit more and say, look, I have to say no because I just need to recharge a bit for whatever reason. That's life in the fast lane, and it's not paddling uphill. And there's nothing wrong morally with paddling uphill. It's just exhausting, man. It's just, you know, and you see that with a lot of people and go like, oh, yeah, can't wait until it's Friday on Monday. Oh man, you know, Sunday evenings, like, oh, Monday's around the corner. And that is just a tiring way of living life. and I don't like it. But it does require a whole, what you talk about, you know, a change of state. It requires a change of thinking that says, could success be downstream? And am I just going the wrong way, or thinking that it's up there where it actually is down there? And is it maybe possible to just turn my canoe around, my kayak around, and start pedaling downstream? But that's hard, because if you, for half your life, in my case, for 28, 29, 30 odd years, have thought that success is uphill, upstream, and you just got to push, 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 push to get there. And suddenly you go, well, maybe it's not. Well, first of all, you get this whole hit of, my God, what have I been doing for the last 30 years? You know, what an idiot. But it's like, nah, you know, even that fits in with purpose. It's like, well, it really taught me on how not to do stuff. You know, so now I can start to, you know, do things easier. And I'm not saying that I'm there. It's not that I've completely mastered it, but boy, has my life gotten easier over the last, you know, 19 years compared to the first 30. Absolutely. Yeah. But still stuff hits you. Hey, life is not like, it's not beer and Skittles all the way, but you learn how to deal with it much easier. It's like, it's pretty much like martial arts, you know, you use the force in order to deflect the force and turn it around on someone else, rather than just being an NRL player and just bashing into people, you know, and just banging against a brick wall. It's just easier, and it gives you more energy. So your body is grateful for it. It just makes you feel better.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. Because what I found when I was living my lifestyle before, like in that partying and everything, yeah, like I'd go back to work and you're just scattered, and you're seeing the world through, you know, a stimulated set of eyes, and
Mm.
that sort of partying lifestyle, and um, the unhealthy foods, the unhealthy behaviors, the negative self-talk, it causes you to see the world in a different light that's not coming
Mm.
from your true self anyway. So then even when you're like that, and then you try and turn that kayak around, so you go downstream, you're probably still not going to see the things you should be seeing if you were back to your true self anyway. And
Mm.
once you start to clean yourself up, then yeah, you're just able to be yourself and see the world for what it is. Identify, things like your personal values, which is what you got me to do a while back, and that was key for me. That was,
Mm.
I'm still blown away at what that done to my life by identifying my personal values,
Mm.
and that way I could actually find out what I wanted to do. I could actually steer myself in the right direction. Whereas before, because I was stimulated, like I lived a party lifestyle for so
Yeah.
long, I'm like, how can I find out what I want to do for the rest of my life when I've been partying the whole time?
Mm.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So, so the first thing was, cleaning up my lifestyle, and then, coming to see you, identify my personal values, and working downstream, and making sure I am going in the right direction. And it's just a much, much better life now. And
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, you look the part, so that's easy. You know, I can see it. Now,
mm,
what I find interesting, and that goes for everyone, and even for myself, is that we think we see the truth. You know, we see what is, but it's never, we don't. You know, we always have some sort of coloured glasses or coloured lenses on, and even my ears
yeah,
don't hear, you know, don't hear what's exactly out there. It just hears what it is that I've been programmed to hear, or what I've programmed myself to see, or what I've programmed myself to feel or taste or smell or touch. You know, so people think that what they're looking at is what everyone else is looking at as well. And it's, they say, well, we might agree on the fact that we, you know, are having a Zoom conversation. It's like, yeah, but the way I'm looking at it in terms of my meaning is entirely different than what you're looking at from your meaning. So when you find that what you're looking at is actually what you're looking at through your filtered glasses that you always have on, based on, you know, what I call your feed four P's, you know, your peers, professors, professionals, and your parents, you know, that have taught you stuff, and then your life experience. There's no way that you can look at life objectively. It's just not possible. And our senses, our sensory organs, are just intake channels. You know, they don't do anything than just let light in, really, because that's what everything is. And our brains interpret that based on our model of the world. So when you get results in that stink, it's not that the results stink, it's just that you have interpreted those results as something that stinks. And we might agree on you know, some of those as populace, as a population, or as a people, we might agree on the fact that people dying on us stinks. On the other hand, if you can give that a different meaning, that whole experience changes. And it's the same with losing work, with losing money. It all depends on what type of meaning you give that. But if you keep reinterpreting that as something that's bad, so put it on the negative side, give it some black colored filter, it becomes really hard to change that. So it has to again come from that umbrella and say, well, what's actually happening underneath that thing? Where am I in charge of how I can see stuff? And that for me was key. As to open up to the idea that results in life could be downstream rather than upstream. And it's tough. It's tough because if you've been programmed for 30 years to think that everything is upstream, and even your parents told you that with all the love that they had because that was their belief system, it can be quite tricky to go against that, thinking, well, I love you, mum and dad, but I really think that my way of looking at life is more effective and more honoring for me. And if you then get professionals that say, well, Mark, you should not leave that job, because that's a really good job, and what else are you going to do? It can put a lot of doubt in people. And then responsibilities that they chuck on top of their lives, mortgages, kids, or whatever, car payments, you mention it. That can create this thing, this monster, this machine in itself. If you say, well, I actually like to let go of that, that's revolutionary, man. And I applaud people that are willing to do that. For instance, someone like you say, well, I'll just leave all that behind. But it does take quite a bit of courage. And I say that to every client. It's like, that takes courage, because you think something that has benefits and drawbacks, but because you think it sort of feels familiar, it feels safe, and it feels comfortable, even though sometimes it stinks. And to drop all that and go for something that you don't know yet, that you don't trust yet, that you haven't seen the results from yet, but that you just go on in search of by thinking, well, there must be something better. It's courageous. I find it really courageous. So I applaud every client that dares to go in that direction. And the only thing that starts to increase your confidence, increase your trust in actually doing this is creating results. Because once you start to see that things improve, you go like, oh, well, okay, first time might be a coincidence, might be a fluke. And then second time something happens, you go, oh, okay, yeah, right, well, might still be a fluke. And third time something happens that's better, you go, oh, there seems to be a bit of a pattern here. And that's what your brain picks up on. So that's what that downstream thing seems to be. The results start to come into your life, either created by you or created by you just, rapidly going downstream and stuff coming at you. You go like, there must be a little bit more than this just being a coincidence or something. Maybe there is something to this whole downstream thing. And maybe I don't have to fight my way up. Maybe I can just course correct my way down. And once that starts to settle as an idea that gets more and more evidence, that idea slowly morphs into a belief. And once that belief gets more and more evidence, it starts to morph into a conviction. And once it's a conviction, you're unstoppable, because now it's become your new truth. It's become a new set of lenses. You go, well, I like those ones. I really like looking through those lenses. And that's that constant adaptation process where you just find out whether the lenses that you're looking at life through are still suitable for you. And if they're not, just take them off. Well, I can't take them off because I've got house payments to make. So that's the choice. That's a choice. And I respect that. But that's a choice you make. We chucked everything in, and people go like, oh, are you crazy? You say, well, maybe. But you know what? Here am I 19 years later, or 18 years later, since 2000, and we're still rocking and rolling. And sure, there's some things that I could have had if I were still a lawyer. But, does it really matter? I feel more in purpose now. And honestly, look, I'm not a fortune teller, but I don't know if I would have made it till 49 if I'd stayed in law. I just don't know. We'll never know. But I know what it was doing to my body at age 29. Another 20 years of that bruising and battering, I'm not sure if it would have still been around. But we'll never know, because I made a change.
Yeah, it's like is what you're currently doing sustainable or not?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for me it is. It's easy, man. Like,
yeah.
I think it's the same for you. Like it's not work. It's what I enjoy doing. My partner sometimes has to stop me and go like, "Come on, man." It's like, why? I'm really, it's good fun. Just to say, well, no, we got to go away and do something else. I'm like, oh, why? So yeah, if you're willing to spend 80 hours on this and it seems like nothing, to me, that's a sign I'm doing the right thing. And that might not be the same sort of measurement stick, the measuring stick for everyone else. But for me, it's like, man, if I'm willing to do this and can't get enough of it and want to do it from morning till night, not as an obsession, but if I just enjoy doing it that way,
Why not?
must be somewhere. Yeah, exactly.
Definitely. So, the way you see the world, how much does the RAS have to do it? Can you explain that?
Good
So the
answer, yeah.
reticular activating system, like, and you told me about that a while ago, and I know I keep referring back to our time together, but I like to use examples, that have happened to me, and I was like, like back then my mind was blowing. I was like, what is this why? So yeah, if you can touch on that and relate it to how we view the world and how we view ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I always say, and this is one I didn't get. This is not mine. I got this from Chris Howard, one of the guys I listened to for a while. He said, "We're always thinking with our ass." And you're like, "What? We're thinking with our ass." And he said, "Yeah, you're thinking with your ass. Your reticular activating system." So there's a bit of popular science behind that, but your RAS, your reticular activating system, is part of your brain. It's your brain makeup, and it's a part that sits sort of behind your eyes, between your ears, somewhere there. And it allows you to, or it allows your brain to focus on stuff that really seems to be important based on your belief systems and also what your senses are taking in. So it gives attention to stuff that is deemed to be important or useful. So, and the simplest example that I always use, and it's a classic, if you see a car that you've never seen before and you go, oh my gosh, that's a really interesting car, I bet you that you'll see it for the next 4 days straight, because suddenly it's in the forefront of your mind. So your brain is now like, oh, that must be important apparently, because you looked at that and it made an impression on him. So therefore you'll keep seeing it. Or the person that you haven't seen for years and you bump into them on the street, and for the next 2 weeks you keep bumping into them. It's like, well, how coincidental is that? It's more that focus on there. So by what we use with our prefrontal cortex and our decision-making skills, what we decide, either by it making an impression on us positively and negatively, hey, so it works both ways. But what our brain has decided is important is what our reticular activating system will actually guide our senses for to pick up more of. So it's like a sonar gauge thing. You're trying to pick up.
So if you know how to use it, if you're aware of it,
I think
days.
so. Yeah. Some neuroscientists say, oh, it's just complete nonsense. But for me, again, it's my belief system, and I've seen it happen in so many clients as well. Once you know how to use it, you can actually train your brain to use your senses to start seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling more of that, what it is that you want to see. It also happens by default. So if you think that life is against you and all these bad things happen to you, and bad luck always comes to you, then your brain goes like, okay, well, that must be important. It doesn't really care for right, wrong, bad, right, whatever. It just goes for it. So if you constantly focus on all the bad luck that happens in your life, your brain deems that important. So it will actually start focusing your eyes, your ears, your mouth, your nose, and your fingers to see, hear, taste, touch, smell more of that bad stuff, because apparently it's important for you. So whatever happens in life, you filter out what it is that you want to see or hear. So the people that say, look, the earth is going to smithereens, we're destroying the planet, they're probably correct in their point of view, because whatever they'll focus on in the news is how bad it's actually going. And that's because their reticular activating system and their sense of what is important in life will make them focus on all that bad news. If you think, well, yeah, of course, there's lots of stuff that's really bad in the world, but hey, let's look on where we are actually making a difference in people's lives or on the planet, and say, well, where are we doing replanting schemes for forests, and where are we doing renewable energy stuff, and where are we trying to make a difference in people's well-being? And those people will use their reticular activating system to say, well, in all the news that comes across my screen or that I read about, let's put more attention, energy, and focus on that stuff. And that's something you can do deliberately. Your brain will help you. So that's why we tend to maintain a certain vision of the world or a certain belief system of the world, because our reticular activating system keeps that in. It says, well, see, it happens again. Oh, see, that's where it happens again. And it sort of does, but out of everything that's happening, you decide to use your binoculars through your reticular activating system and really put a big focus on something particular that falls in line with your current belief systems and your experiences. So if you say, look, I want to use that deliberately, then first of all, you want to make up what it is that you want to see next, or hear next, or taste next, or smell next. And say, right, that's what I want to make really important. I'm going to put that on top of my values list. That's what I want. So now let's train my brain to start looking, tasting, smelling, seeing, feeling more of that, so I can start to create more of that in my life. So that's where you use your reticular activating system to your benefit. And that then automatically, slowly but surely over time, will train your brain to by default look more in that direction. So then you go, well, my life used to be really crap, but actually now it seems to make more sense. Don't know how I've done it. Well, initially you did that by choice, by deliberate effort. But once that machine is going, as it was going before, now it looks for results in where you want to see them rather than in results where you don't want to see them. And you can keep that up. It's downstream. You don't have to do much, and you're still making progress. So that's how, well, at least in a neurolinguistic way or in the coaching way, the reticular activating system can help us. But we got to kickstart it. We want to put it in action and say, well, what's really important to me? What is it that I want? Why do I want it? And now let's focus on how to get there.
Yeah, definitely. Like even like you could be sitting somewhere, you could be at a restaurant, with your partner or friends, and someone will say something in the background, and for some reason these 4 or 5 words just popped up and hit you in the ear hole, but no one else heard it. And it's just something in line with what you've been focusing on and your subconscious. I completely agree with that, Mark.
The classic is your own name, mate. Your own name. If you hear Adam somewhere in the distance, we're so focused on our own name, and that's a typical application of the reticular activating system. We're so attuned to hearing our own name or hearing something being said about us that our ears are always pricked up, to pick that up. And it's people that are considered Debbie Downers, or Johnny Downers. They'll always find something that doesn't work in whatever is going on. So it might be a beautiful day, and they still go like, oh yeah, but tomorrow's going to be bad,
or it's too hot.
It's too hot. It's too
too sunny.
Whatever. And it's not that they are negatively, well, in a sense they are negatively wired, but they can't even help it. But it's that they focus on what's not working. And many people do. And you can't blame them. There's no moral judgment in that. Because some people have gone through, nature and nurture. Some people have just been brought up in a certain way just because of life experience that they go like, well, life seems to stink, But that's where the biggest changes can happen as well. And I think those are the clients that I find myself most attracted to in terms of professional success, if you want to call it as well, but also just for purpose sake. Like, man, if those people, and you hear plenty of those ones in the news as well, you read their history and you're like, oh my God, and then they come out the other end and change their life around. And you're like, wow, that's for me is one of those typical applications of positive psychology. So, well, let's start looking at things differently and use them differently. And there's been a lot of research about that one as well, because the psychologists are interested in that sort of stuff, where they talk about the impact bias. So we always seem to exaggerate, things in the future that could negatively affect us, and we always seem to minimize positive effects, of stuff, or we seem to overrate or underrate stuff, whereas in real life it always pans out differently. So for instance, if you would ask people, say, well, what do you prefer? Do you prefer to win the lottery, or do you prefer to lose your legs in order to get more happy? You're right. Well, obviously I would like to win the lottery in order for me to get more happy. But when they did tests on that, and that's actually been quite some years ago, where they did testing on that sort of stuff with negative events, people label things negatively or positively, it ultimately didn't make a difference in their happiness quotient. So literally someone who lost their legs in an accident or due to illness, after a while had a same level of happiness as a person who won the lottery, or actually even worse, some people who won the lottery were worse off than the person who had something really negative happen to them. And it's all on that impact bias stuff and how we make things of life and choose to see things differently, literally. So there's so much in language, man. It's like, well, learn to see things differently, literally. You go, well, how do I do that? It's like, well, you got to train the organ that actually puts lenses in front of your eyes, to start seeing things differently. And we have so much at our disposal neurologically to help us with that. It's just tapping into all that stuff and start using it. Right, thinking is fixed and set, and you just got to deal with the cards that you've been play with the cards you've been dealt. It's not true. It's my personal belief, but I just don't think it's true. We within that big playing field of life, where there is some predetermination, there is so much choice. So much room to move and just do things differently. And that's why I've sort of gone into the world of mindfulness a lot more. And I don't think we talked a lot about that because it sort of came at a later stage of my career. But to have that sense of presence, to be more aware of what's going on right here, right now, rather than constantly making all these temporal jumps, in the past or into the future, that first allows you to become really centered, to then take as many of the filters off that you're carrying on your ears and your eyes and whatever else, and to then say, right, what do I want? Why do I want it? And how am I going to get there next? It sort of cleans all these filters up if you let it. I still have filters, I'm still a Dutchman living in Australia, being a man, being a father. So there's all these roles and filters that I carry. But that's okay, as long as I'm aware of them. And as long as I'm aware that they do influence the way I look at life slightly, then mindfulness can allow me to come back to my center and say, well, can I aim to minimize that influence as much as possible? And then what's next? From that point of view, let's start charging forwards and let's put some good goals in place in line with my values and see how I can make that work. It's simplifying life. It's really simple. And I say it with a lot of respect, it's really simple, but it's not always easy based on the fact that we all have so much programming behind us already that might, throw a bit of a spanner in the works in terms of, well, how easy it's going to be for me to actually get there. But the principle is easy. We have free choice, to a very high degree. You go, yeah, but, sucky stuff happens in life. Like, absolutely. But then we still have free choice on how we deal with that. We can let us be dragged down by that completely and suck our thumb all day long and go, like, oh, that's bad. Or we can say, well, yeah, that absolutely stank, man. But here's what I'm going to do with that. Here's what I'm going to do and make a difference. There's plenty of people like that as well in the world. And look at, what's her name? Jana Pittman. Is it Jana? I think so. The lady that got burned while she was doing some sort of outback run.
Yeah, the marathon. Yeah, that was,
or whatever her name was.
Horrific. Yeah,
but look at that story, man. It's like, burn 75, 80, 90% of your body. And then look at her. And you go, like, well, for me, that's sort of living proof of, well, some stuff stinks in life and some stuff leaves literal scars, literally. But it doesn't have to define you. And that's where I think the power is. And I respect people that can't see that, can't do that. It's not like, oh, you're stupid. It's not that. But it's where I'm trying to sort of put WD-40 in, to get all those little nuts and bolts undone and see if they can actually see past that point, to a certain degree. And that's why I love coaching and counseling, because it's planting those seeds. And sometimes you can see them to come to a harvest. And sometimes it's just about planting seeds, but it's a fascinating field because human potential is completely endless. It baffles me. It's endless.
It is endless because like one example of absolute proof is year after year, no matter what sport or discipline, all these feats, the records are broken and someone gets faster, someone gets higher, someone gets longer, someone climbs bigger, someone does something crazier. And all it does is just prove to someone else, the other people that are in that same sport or discipline, that what's actually possible. And then they're just going to, go towards that. Like Travis Pastrana was the first guy to do a double backflip on a motorbike. I don't ride motorbikes at all, but I still remember watching it. I was just like, what? You're kidding me. And then, not too long ago, an Aussie guy done a triple backflip on a motorbike. And it's like that, you just wouldn't think that was possible. And obviously what's after that, a quadruple backflip. And who knows if someone's going to do that, but no one thought a triple backflip would ever be possible. So it is endless, mate.
Yeah.
People just keep going and going. And it's like, so it's, yeah, like you have to dream big, I suppose. Otherwise you're selling yourself short.
And it's okay, eh? Because sometimes when I say that, people get really despondent because they find themselves not dreaming big and think that they should in order to make
Okay. Yeah.
progress. You say, well, don't compare yourself to that. It's like that you're not, you know, it's not that you're less or something because you can't dream big. I agree. I think we should all dream really big.
Yeah.
And we should dream so big that it actually becomes nearly unrealistic for ourselves because it drives you forward. But if you're not doing that, that's okay too. It's like there's nothing wrong with that per se. Let's see if we can dream slightly bigger than where you are now. You know, because it's that whole Lao Tzu thing. You know, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. I'm quite happy if the first step is the ultimate goal for you. You know, because you can't see beyond that, and that's cool. That's all right. So if you're in such a situation and you go, oh, man, I really, honestly, Mark, with all my sincerity, I can't see beyond that. So that's cool. But the fact that you're here, you know, the fact that we are talking means that something inside you must want something different, because otherwise we wouldn't be talking. You know, and people go, yeah, okay, I guess so. It's all right. So let's just look at, you know, 0.5% outside your current worldview. You know, could you do one thing differently? You know, could you change one slight perspective? You know, could you, I don't know, affect one level of emotion somewhere, or could you find some form of inspiration or one thing that drives you in the world that really is important? And if that's all, if that's your thinking big, I'm happy. It's like it's you know, for me, the thing for most, what I find I can't say my strength is, but what I definitely hold on to is that I hopefully open the space for people to start thinking big, because I think massively big. And what I want to do is keep that space open for people, but still within that wriggle room that they find they have. So it's not like me ripping whatever hair I've got left out of my head. It's like, oh, why can't you think bigger? No, you got to take their worldview as a starting point and say, well, what's one level up from that? You know, and that's where solution focused approach, solution focused therapy comes in. It's like, well, what's the first step? You know, if there is lots of stuff that you want to get done, and it's so confusing and so big that you actually get really desperate and despondent because I can't make that happen. Well, what's step one? And once you have step one sort of embodied, you know, what's that? Well, let's look at step two, you know, and then let's step three. And once you're at step 15 and look back and go, well, step 15 is still not a lot if we're looking at 100, you know, being the goal. But man, you've got 15 steps, you know, up your sleeve now that you didn't have before. How cool is that? Let's celebrate. And your brain, you know, neurology and neuroscience actually proves that our brains pick up on that. They're going, oh, we're making momentum. So reticular activating system is like, well, what, you know, success breeds success, or, you know, momentum breeds momentum. Those people then slowly start to move a little bit, but surely. So I'm not always trying to, no, let me put it differently. What I'm not doing with people and say, well, you got to think big, even though I believe that, I won't do that, because that might put people off immediately if they're not big thinkers by themselves, based on their personality style or based on the situation that they're in. It's like, well, let's just try and think outside the box, or the circle that you find yourself in. What's the first step? And if I find in discussions with them that they are big thinkers, but have find themselves constricted, it's like, well, okay, let's dream. You know, let's dream beyond all this and see what could be possible, even though it seems impossible from a practical point of view. But let's start taking that as a guidepost somewhere, as a lighthouse in the distance that we can start sailing towards, and we'll see where we end up. It doesn't matter. Any step is a step taken.
Yeah, it depends on the individual. So it's like,
absolutely,
where you said about like comparison, how much does that play a part in people's mental health, like comparing ourselves to others, and you know, especially social media, like,
yeah, I was going to say social media, man, is deadly. Wow. And that's a belief system, because I don't
no, yeah, I know what you mean, but well, it's the way you use it. Like we're not taught how to use social media.
No.
All that social media, I'm like, the purpose of why we're on Facebook, from, you know, Facebook's, you know, I know they've got their mission, but they want you on Facebook as long as possible.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, living in that deadly world of comparison where you're just constantly seeing other people's appearances, which appearances are never what they seem anyway. They're all like, you know, who's putting up photos of when they're just getting out of bed or when they're having a really bad day, because we all have them.
Yep.
So rather than
Yeah.
sit there when you're having a bad day comparing yourself to someone else's, and their Instagram's just beautiful, all the pictures are in the right spot and they're in the exotic places, and it's like, man, don't like come back to what you want, your dream and that sort of thing. Like, it doesn't matter if someone else is dreaming bigger than you. And as you said, like, don't think that you're doing it the wrong way or anything. You know what I mean? It's what you want. And if you find meaning in what you're going after, then happy days.
Yeah, and you just don't know what goes on in other people's lives. So they might be smiling on the outside, and I see those on a daily basis, man. They come in and you go like, okay, yep, nice car, just driven up the driveway. You know, it's like, yep, looking good. Yeah, I'm finally dressed, you know, smiling when they come in, and then they vomit all their stories over my table and go like, oh my gosh, you know, there's something seriously going on in your life.
Yeah,
here.
wow.
What's that? And so looking at someone on the outside and thinking that therefore they've got it made because it looks so good on the outside. I know that 9 out of 10 times it says nothing, you know, nothing about the person on the inside, and they could be suffering big time. But when you start comparing yourself to the outside person, you generally always fall short. I do. Yeah.
Well, there's
Man,
always someone more
man,
advanced.
I drive a Kia. I don't drive a BMW or a Mercedes. So compared to the BMW and Mercedes drivers, I fall short because I would like to drive a Mercedes or a BMW, but it doesn't mean anything. You know, it doesn't mean anything other than I drive a different car than yours. But if I compare that other car is better, so therefore they're better off, that's false logic. You know, it looks that way, but it's only because in my belief system I have equated BMWs and Mercedes with being better. So therefore, if you drive one, well, you must therefore be doing better. But it's
Right.
bad. It's bad logic because it doesn't mean a thing. That thing could be completely financed, and these people being completely stressed to the hilts and making their repayments. And then I'm actually better off with my fully paid Kia and go like, oh, yeah, I'm driving that thing because I've paid for it cash and it's mine. You know, so who's better off? Well, I don't know. But I do know that if I keep comparing myself to these other people, I fall short. You know, and then that's the same with people who, you know, who look that they've got it made, you know, property portfolios, I don't know, shares, everything that seems to be all right. And then the next thing you read about them, that they committed suicide or something. You go, what? It's like, how did that happen? Well, obviously, property portfolios and shares and whatever else doesn't create happiness, you know, and it just doesn't. It's what sits in here, and what sits in here, and that combo between head and heart. You know, it doesn't matter. You could be completely happy, and it's a classic, obviously. You can be completely happy somewhere in a little cottage, you know, in the desert, because you're just happy and you don't need all that stuff. And you can be completely happy having all the goods too. That's obvious.
Yep.
But one, it doesn't define us. But that's what we think when we compare ourselves. Like, well, the more we have, and the more we smile, and the more we have fine dinners and whatever else, well, therefore we must be happy. It doesn't work that way.
So are you finding meaning in your life or the things in your life?
You can both. You can
Yeah.
both. Look,
Yeah.
I find meaning in my life in general, but I
Mm.
definitely find meaning in traveling, and traveling requires money. And
Mm.
I find meaning in my little Kia. You know, I love the little
Mm.
Serato. It's a great car. You know, not that I'm sort of endorsing it here, but it's a great little car.
Yeah.
So I find meaning in that because I was able to pay for that cash because I worked for that. So that car is meaningful to me because it symbolizes something. You know, it's so that there can be meaning in goods because it can
Yep.
give you a sense of achievement. It can give you a sense of security, safety, whatever it is. You know, a sense of identity maybe somewhere, and that's cool. It's all cool. But don't think that you have to have that in terms of giving yourself meaning. You know, there can be meaning in life in general, and it always comes back down to us. Like, do we feel that we have meaning? Because then in whatever else we do and have, that meaning will be reflected. But if we try and find meaning in ourselves through the other stuff, this gets a bit spiritual. This is my belief anyway. If we try and if we try and find feeling good in ourselves by having other things or having certain positions or being a certain someone, you're going to get caught out at some stage, because if you don't feel it inside, nothing else outside you will make you feel that. It might reflect it back a little bit, but not a lot. And you get caught out, you'll still be unhappy. Whereas if you feel that meaning on the inside already, everything else you do and see around you and everything you have will reflect that meaning, properly. And it doesn't matter what that is. Whether you live in a $50,000 little condo, or you live in a $5 million house in the beach, it doesn't matter. If you feel that sense of meaning and happiness and fulfillment in life, everything else around you will reflect that. And that's more of a spiritual approach, obviously, and people might disagree with me on that one. But for me, it's like, well, everything I have around me in my room here reflects me. So I might as well just be grateful for it, or at least work on that, rather than thinking that the Mercedes that the neighbor has got, the Mercedes, is more meaningful, because it's not. It's just not.
Yeah.
Not in my view, anyway.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then if you're relying on other things around you to make you happy, what happens when they go? So,
Exactly.
So how you're saying, like, if the happiness comes from within,
Yep.
then you can be in that little cottage out in the woods, out in the desert, and still be happy, because it's here. Everywhere you go, it's within you. It's not something external.
No.
Yeah, no, that's a powerful thing. All right, so two things, Mark. When people find themselves in that spiraling down, like when I'm like the perception of things and their awareness of things, I'm like, they got their kayak going upstream. What's one thing that people can implement today, right now, to start to come back up out of that spiral and then start to get downstream?
The easiest I find with most clients nowadays, and I've talked about those four corners, spiritual, mental, emotional, physical. The easiest I find still is something physical. So change something in your behavior. Stop doing something that you are doing that is not working, or start something else that's more in line with what you want, because that immediately shows results. Changing your thinking is possible, but it's sometimes a bit hard for people. Finding meaning in stuff, if life seems meaningless, that can be tough too. And to say, well, let's just feel better, that's sometimes impossible for people who they just feel crap. But doing something differently, that's easy. Well, it's not easy, but that's a doable thing. I can stop having 2 glasses of wine every night because I just feel horrible. I can stop that, or I can actually start taking up some exercise, or I can start taking up some healthy eating habits, or I can start seeing a counselor, or I can stop gorging myself on Macca's 3 times a week, or I can stop complaining verbally to people. I can just stop that. That's a behavioral thing, and that's often the easiest for people I've found over the 15 years I've been doing this stuff, because it's a doing thing. It takes a bit of discipline to do it, but it's immediate. So the changing thinking is a bit of a process. Changing your feelings can be a bit of a process. Finding meaning, there's a bit of a process in that one too. But behavior is instant. You can just stop doing stuff and start doing other things. So that's definitely one. Pick one or two. Pick one or two things that you can either start or stop, and then see what the results are, how that changes everything, because it starts to change all the other 3 elements as well.
So I suppose the next time someone finds themselves wanting to reach for something they know that's not serving for them, like physically reach for something, like they're trying to distract themselves. It might be the TV, it might be Facebook, it might be a piece of chocolate cake, it might be, the 6th glass of wine or something like that. So like actually stop themselves from reaching for whatever that is, and just swap it with something else.
Stop it, do something else.
It's immediate, right?
That's an easy one, and it's not the be all and the end all, but it's definitely a really easy starting point. Absolutely.
And I suppose progress makes us happy. Like once we start to feel some progress, so once you do swap something out and you're like, wow, I just made a change in that instant, you already feel that progress, and it's probably going to be there's probably going to be another event like that in the near future. You're probably going to want to do it again.
Well, and you start to feel a sense of control, because your behavior you can control. So if life seems out of control and you pick elements back that you actually have control over, your brain immediately picks up on that, starts focusing your reticular activating system on wherever else you have control in your life, and it starts to snowball from there. So grab some of that control back, and that becomes a self-repeating, self-reinforcing scheme, ultimately neurologically as well. So it's using that machine that's already there at your disposal. Actually use it.
Awesome, Mark. What's your favorite quote, whether it's one from yourself or one from someone else? Like what's just your one favorite quote?
Okay. Serenity is not seeking shelter from the storm. It's finding peace within it.
Right. That's awesome.
That's
can you repeat
one
that? Can you repeat that one more time? Can you repeat that one?
Serenity is finding peace within it. And replace the word serenity with whatever you want to replace. Happiness, calmness, cool, whatever it is. But and that's my mindfulness sort of mantra in a sense. It's like if you can sit in whatever storm life throws at you, whatever situation, and actually be okay in that storm, nothing's going to hurt you. It's it just comes over you. It does its thing. It seems to damage you, and then it moves on. Sometimes you get bruised and battered, it's like you won't always come out clean, but scars are okay as well, as long as that mindset is, I'll get through this. No matter how many scars or how many, little bite and cut marks and whatever else, it doesn't matter. When you get through it, that sense of knowing, that, serenity is in me. It's not in fleeing from something or running away from something else. That's the mindful approach, And acceptance and commitment therapy act that they call that, to be okay, not being okay. I like that one too. That's very similar. It's okay to not be okay. You don't have to fight that. It's okay to feel crap. It's okay. Yeah.
And like change is okay. Change is inevitable.
Don't resist change. And that's probably the sort of the shorter version. Just stop resisting.
Yeah. It will pass. Change will pass, right? Like
absolutely. Yeah. So serenity is not seeking shelter from the storm. It's finding peace within it. That's one of my favorites. Yeah.
Beautiful, mate. Look, Mark, thanks very much.
Pleasure.
No, it's been many years in the making, but look, just a big shout out to you, mate, because like coming to you put me on a better path, and I really mean that. And I still implement things that we've done together in the past today. So you are a part of that process into where I'm sitting talking to you now in the life that I live. So I appreciate it. Yeah.
Love to take all that credit, but you is doing the walking.
Yeah, but it takes, it takes someone to change someone else's perception on things.
Look, I'll take that. Yeah, absolutely. It's a sparring partner. It's a combined effort. For sure. All
right. So where can people find you, Mark?
Easiest way is just to log on to the website, simplifyinglife.com.au. So it's simplifyinglife.com.au. Otherwise, just type my name in, Marc the Bruin, Marc with a C. Maybe you can put it on a little link. But
I'll put links and stuff down.
Yeah, that's it. Just type it in on Google. I'll pop up somewhere. But simplifyinglife.com.au is the easiest way.
Great, Mark. Thanks very much, mate. I appreciate your time. Everyone, we'll get a lot of value out of this for sure. Like there's been there was a lot of moments where we could have gone off onto other tangents and really explored things further. And, this could have gone on for another 18 hours, I'm sure. So, but at least people have got something they can take away and implement right away. So
we'll make this an 18-part series, Adam.
For sure. It's a go. Great. Thanks, Mark.
Cool, mate.
Have a good day. See you, mate.